IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners. Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Before we get on with today's episode, a few quick announcements. Firstly, loads of love to our listeners who've been writing with their feedback. Thank you, Priyanka and Pratik, for your kind words. Next, the big announcement of the winner of Rajat's book, Rokeby India. And the winner is Apeksha. Congratulations, Apeksha. We'll soon be reaching out to you for further details. As for today's episode, we have a very talented wordsmith, Aakash Mehrotra, who was on our episode some time ago and we spoke about Nagaland. Let's get on with today's episode and find out where he's taking us today.
So with that introduction, I'd like to welcome Aakash Mehrotra from the blog handofcolors.me. Aakash, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast and being a part of the podcast again, I should say, and welcome.
Thanks a lot.
It's very nice to have you back, and one of the few guests, Aakash, that has come back on the podcast. So really, really glad to have you. Now, Aakash, before I know a lot of the listeners of the previous podcast would have known a little bit about you and what you do, about your blog as well. But for the new listeners who are coming on board, why don't you give us a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. I started blogging somewhere in 2015. Which is almost 3-4 years of blogging. I've been blogging and writing a lot. A lot of my articles are now published in travel magazines and newspapers and dailies, both nationally and internationally. I've been curating communication designs for some hospitality brands as well now. And apart from this, I'm traveling and writing more as a passion, and I'm not a full-time blogger. I'm working in a consultancy firm, and I do a lot of researches over there. I've also written a book, and I'm writing a second book right now. So I think this is more or less okay about my thing.
Brilliant. And Aakash is actually Aakash turned a novelist, I think, after we spoke to you last time, right?
Yes.
The Other Guy, that's the name of the book too?
The book came in 2017.
We will include a link to Aakash's book too in the description of the podcast, so
Thanks.
yeah, people can check it out. So Aakash, now that you've given us a brief intro about yourself, why don't you also quickly tell us and the listeners where you're taking us to today?
Okay, so today we'll be talking about Landour. Landour is just 5 kilometers from Mussoorie. And Mussoorie, as you all know, is quite a favorite haunt of people in North India, one of the favorites, hill stations. But Landour, which is only 6 or 7 kilometers from Mussoorie, is often missed. So I have a childhood connection with Mussoorie and Landour. For me, Landour was okay, I'm gonna skip Mussoorie and go to Landour. And that had been my favorite, always. I always missed Mussoorie because once you go to Landour, which is 5 kilometers uphill, you literally see and you can believe that Mussoorie is a good place, but nothing like Landour. It has a different vibe altogether.
Absolutely, and I think it's for a good reason that it's also referred to as the Queen of Hills, right? I mean, more so Mussoorie and Landour together, but still they're referred to as the Queen of the Hills. A very quaint little town. We'll be talking about it a little more, but that's the charm of Landour. I think it's more about the place and about the being there than going there to see the things or activities to indulge in. So now just tell us, when is an ideal time to visit Landour, or when did you visit Landour?
I mean, the ideal time to visit Landour is you can go there almost any season, any time of the year. The summers are different because the summers are cooler over there. And even in April or May, you can go with a light woolen and be there. Rains are just amazing. I mean, in the monsoon, you can literally be hit by the clouds, as you say. Winters, Landour sees snowfall before Mussoorie. So, the best place to be there to have a good view of the snowfall in Uttarakhand is Landour then.
And I also believe, just as a little bit of a cultural connection or the British connection, basically, right? Landour has historically been British cantonment. I think that's how it basically came into being. And it was also named after a Welsh town called as Landour or something,
yes.
right?
So Landour has quite a good connection with the English history as such. And not just English history, it's also where the Anglo-Indian writing too. So we can talk more about, the sort of people who have come and visited Landour and what has come out of Landour for all of us. So Landour, this quaint town was after, they had a fight, the Gorkhas and the British, they had a fight. And after that entire conquest, the British established Landour as one of the cantonment areas where the soldiers can go and relax. So the original idea of Landour was to go and relax, and that idea has remained. Even today, you can go to Landour and relax and do nothing more.
Absolutely. I think it's a sanatorium. I think that's what you're referring to also, right?
Yes. So from that time, Landour is steeped in that British history and that colonial charm. Even if today, if you go to Landour, you'll find the houses which have those sort of architecture you can find there. The exact architecture which, you find in, Irish villages, Irish towns, or, the British villages and towns, you find those quaints and those hints in Landour as well. Even the roads in Landour, and there aren't many roads in Landour. It's a very small town. But most of these areas, you'll find names like, Kenilworth, Woodstock, Waverley, and all of these are actually British towns or British villages which are there. So those names are still there. So there is an unmissable English connection in the Landour area, the entire place, be it architecture, be it in form of the cuisine or the culinary skills that have developed there. The cottages are still in that Tudor style, the very old English connection, in fact. And then the historical places there. There are so many heritage buildings which have now been converted into hotels or homestays. Mm-hmm. And these buildings are from the era of 1800s or so, when Landour actually came into existence.
Absolutely. And quickly making a reference to, right, compared to Mussoorie, this is very, very different because on one hand, you would think Mussoorie is quite commercialized that way, and compared to that, Landour really hasn't lost its charm, right?
No.
It still has that very Raj era kind of everything, right from the architecture to the other heritage structures that you're touching upon. And one of the reasons, while looking this up, right, one of the reasons that probably led to this distinction was that because Landour was a cantonment, right, apparently after 1924, any new construction, right, of private properties and stuff like that, that was kind of banned in Landour, and right, so that perhaps worked out like a good thing in one way, that it wasn't commercialized to a large extent like Mussoorie was, and in one way it kind of we kind of framed it in those 1800s and 1900s, right? It didn't quite change that much, which is a good thing.
Yes, you are exactly on spot. So because it was a cantonment area and the building or anything was not encouraged, so it remained very different from Mussoorie, which evolved as a commercial town. In fact, Mussoorie was a holiday town as well in the early British eras as well, but then it started evolving as a town which had commercial connections. Landour remained entirely, you may say, isolated or desolate from all these things. And it's interesting because it just takes you 15 or 20 minutes to go from Mussoorie to Landour. It's just 5 or 6 kilometers uphill. Very steep road. An exciting journey, really, those 4 or 5 kilometers. But then you'll find the difference. Landour is completely different. I still say Landour, you have to go for, long walks and sitting on a bench and looking at those hills and do nothing. While in Mussoorie, you can have like 10 things to do. You have to visit this place, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And still, both the places have their own charm. You go to Landour and you'll not feel like that you are missing something because it's meant for a different purpose altogether. And because of the reason that, remained isolated and nothing was encouraged. And even today, no one goes there. Landour has remained a favorite of not just the British, but also of many of these princely estates. Like, the Maharaja of Patiala had a holiday home over there. The Maharaja of Alwar had a holiday home over there. And now many of these Bollywood celebs, they have their holiday homes over there. Arshad Warsi has one. Victor Banerjee has one, and Victor Banerjee's home is like amazing. It's like really pretty. The name of his home is Rabbit Thespian. That's the name.
Rabbit Thespian? Okay,
Yes.
that's an interesting name.
Very recently, Sachin Tendulkar has gone there, and he has expressed to make his holiday home over there as well. So, when you see these things, you can realize how different Landour will be. You don't have to see the pictures. You can just imagine how different this place will be from Mussoorie or any of the hill towns which have been commercialized to the extent that we have started, sort of hating them for their commercializations. But Landour has its own charm. It has cute cafes, really good places to eat, really good food, really good places to stay, long walks, and that's everything about Landour.
Brilliant. So let's get into some specifics and talk a little bit more. So what time of the year did you visit Landour?
I recently visited, just last year actually, 2018. It was March or April.
Okay, cool. And in terms of the length of the trip, what would you advise in terms of how much time one can spend there? Obviously, given the beautiful vibe that Landour has, obviously staying there for a while and doing something like writing a book, especially in your case, right? Like something like writing a book might be great, but for somebody visiting, perhaps a weekend would be a good time, right? Good enough time to spend there?
Yes. 2-3 days is good.
Okay, brilliant. And where exactly were you staying, or where did you choose to stay?
I stayed in a heritage property called Rokeby Manor. So Rokeby Manor is 1840. So it was among the first of the buildings that came in Landour. So Landour was established in something around 1820s when the discoverer of Mussoorie, Captain Young, he thought of shifting to Landour and he built his own home over there. And Rokeby Manor was something around 1840s or something. So, the first few buildings, a handful of buildings in Landour. So Rokeby Manor is special that way because, you are going to stay in a building that's almost like 200 years old and hasn't lost that charm.
Oh my
so
God,
you look at it, it still has that, the gingerbread look, as I say. You have those slanted roofs, a beautiful garden, and then all that, the old style stairs which go round and the wooden panels. Rokeby Manor is, if you don't get to stay in Rokeby Manor because it has just like 7 or 8 rooms, it's not a very big place. Okay. You must go to the Emily's Kitchen, which is in Rokeby Manor, for their continental food.
Okay, so that's open for even people not living there, or not staying there?
Yeah, it's open for everyone.
Okay, that's great. But yeah, I just wanted to touch upon Rokeby Manor, right? I just had a chance to look at some of the pictures that you shared, and I was absolutely floored by it also. Like a beautiful old, like I said, 18th century building with a wonderful stone structure with wooden floors, and almost looks like a, what do you call, Swiss chalet? I think you've actually called that in the blog as well. It looks like one of those Swiss chalets that you have in the Alpine mountains. Yes. And just a beautiful look and vibe to it. I think it kind of encapsulates the whole vibe of Landour very nicely, right? Rokeby Manor?
Yes, and Rokeby Manor is almost on the top of the hill. So from there, the sort of views that you get, and especially when you sit in this Emily's kitchen, the sort of views that you can get of the valley. I mean, from there you can look at Mussoorie, you can look at Dehradun also, and those views are amazing. And Mussoorie is especially famous for its views because it is one of those places where you get, there's a technical term for it, which they say there's a striking orange light which you can see during the sunset, right, in Mussoorie and Landour. And it's not in most of the places. So in India, if you have to see like really good sunsets, so Mussoorie, Landour, all of these places are for that. The sky gets really orange, and then there is striking light on the sky which you can see.
Yeah, I also read that I think you can get a glimpse of this from very few places in the world, and actually,
Yes.
Missouri Landor is one of them, and it's almost, I don't know if I should call it like a false horizon or whatever. It's almost like a thin line across the sky, right?
Right.
That gets drawn during sunset and sunrise also, perhaps. And I saw this during the sunset, like in one of the videos. So I think even that's like really dreamy sort of a thing. It feels unreal to an extent also. So I think that's a great view also one can catch. And
Absolutely.
you think Emily's Kitchen gives a view of this too?
Yes, it does. It does. Because Emily's Kitchen has an open area where you can sit.
Okay.
And in that open area, you get a full view of the valley because it's almost at the top. So you get the full view of the valley. You get the view of Mussoorie and Dehradun from there. And you can look at the sky and get this view. Unfortunately, when I was there, it was almost raining. So I did not get view in my last visit, but I've seen it. I've been to Landour like 5 or 6 times now.
Okay.
And as I said, it's like a childhood connection to me. It's absolutely mesmerizing.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, it's that's why, like you mentioned at the beginning also, you really don't have to go and do anything or like have a bucket list or a checklist of things to do, etc. You just have to go and stay there. You just have to go and live there. I think that's the whole vibe of Landour. But I think there's a lot of other things also for people who are more of the kind who actually want to go and indulge themselves in a few activities, right? There's a few things that they can indulge themselves into also, right? So why don't you call out a few of those things also, Akash?
Sure. There are 2 kinds of travelers, as I say. One who go with a bucket list, like there are 10 things that I want to tick and see those stuff. And there are people who just want to breathe in the moment, be there and try to discover, explore things. Landour is mostly for the second type of traveler, where you have to slow down and you have to breathe in those things, hear those stories, just go around, discover it for yourself. It's more like that. But there are important spots in Landour, and each spot has like its own stories. So being in quaint English sort of a setup, Landour has its own sort of rendezvous with these writers where there are ghost stories as well.
Okay.
Yes, there are places where there's a very famous story of a smuggler in Landour, which actually inspired Ruskin Bond to write a very famous story of his. And in fact, most of Ruskin Bond's stories are based on these, local things in and around Landour and Mussoorie. I must add over here, now that I have taken name of Ruskin Bond, I must add over here the most famous personality of Landour is Ruskin Bond.
Exactly.
And there's a famous cafe come homestay now, Doma's Inn. So it serves Tibetan food, and that is right next to Ruskin Bond's house. So if you are a fan of Ruskin Bond, you should go to Landour. You never know, when you are out on a walk, you might just find Ruskin Bond over there. I did that once.
Oh, really? Okay. That must have been something.
Yeah. I was a kid then. I was pretty young at that time. Now Ruskin Bond doesn't come out that often. But every Saturday he opens his doors and he meets people. And sometimes he goes to a bookstore in Mussoorie also. But Landour is a better place to visit him because, it's his house. And Saturday you can go and meet him and greet him and even have tea with him. All of that happens.
That's brilliant. And I think he has lived in Landour for a while also now, right? I think with his adoptive family, right?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Ivy Cottage, I believe, is the name of the property that he lives in. But yeah, like while digging up on this, that's what I found. And yeah, as you mentioned as well, like he's been there around for a while, and a lot of this work also, a lot of his work also that he's done, the famous writer and novelist Ruskin Bond. It's reflected, and it's from his experiences living in Landour, as he is mentioned as well. So I think that's a great addition, if nothing, right? Just the opportunity for his readers or people who are his fans to like go and live in the place that has inspired so many of his works, and also a chance to actually run into Ruskin Bond himself, the man, the legend himself. So
literally,
I think that's brilliant.
And there are some interesting cafes over there. One of the cafe is Landour Bakehouse, which actually is run by the Rokeby Manor property only. Now, interesting thing about Landour Bakehouse, apart from the blueberry cakes and the violet cakes and all of those things, is that they are trying to revive the old cuisines of Landour. Because Landour, because it was home of the soldiers, and it has a lot of connection with that, the English word over there. So it has seen that concoction of the Indian style of cooking and the English style of cooking, and so all of that has evolved. So it has those culinary or the cuisines there, and Landour Bakehouse is trying to revive all those things. So if you go to Landour Bakehouse, you'll find a lot of these books which are trying to revive these old stories, these old recipes of Landour, the folk tales of Landour, everything which has revolved around Landour and how Landour has evolved. So that's one nice place one should go to, not just for the food, because of the sort of thing that they are doing in Landour, and obviously for their great views.
Yeah, and it's a great looking property also. It's a nice little, almost that English type of bakehouse, right?
Yes.
It has a really nice feel about it also. And what was your favorite thing to eat there?
I went there somewhere in the evening and I had my cakes and coffee over there. So I'm a coffee addict, not even a coffee lover.
Okay.
So I have to have coffee. And if I get a chance to have coffee, it means that I have to slow down, sit and have coffee. So that was my thing for Landour Bakehouse, along with cakes. Landour Bakehouse is very near to St. Paul's Church, which is another place to see.
Okay.
Almost a stone's throw away distance is the Rokeby Manor. And you have to just keep walking a little while, and then you come to one of the most famous places. In fact, the most famous place of Landour, which is Char Dukaan.
Oh, okay.
Char Dukaan is exactly Char Dukaan. There are only four shops over there. And they sell, they are all eateries there. There's actually a now fifth shop over there as well. But for me, it will always remain a Char Dukaan, right from my childhood time. And that's a place where you have to sit down, you have to have tea, the bun maska or the Maggie, and then listen to the local gossip. So this place is actually famous for their local gossips, where you can sit and get all this conversation around. And talk to people, they'll tell you about, which other places to go, what other things to do. Landour is famous for its peanut butter also.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, there's also a story to it. A lot of these British officers, when they retired, they went and settled in Landour. And with them, they got these machines to make peanut butter. And after in 1947, they sold these machines at a throwaway price. So still, you can find some of these places which make these peanut butter using those old machines. So you have that old taste still.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, this is in Char Dukaan, or is this someplace else? Where is this?
There are now 4 or 5 places which make peanut butter.
Okay.
One of the most famous places is Anil Prakash, who runs a homestay as well now. So he makes those homemade peanut butters, jams, cheese, preserves, all of those things. So he runs his own homestay, which is called Devdar Woods Hotel. It's again a small property,
Okay.
12 or 15 rooms, but again, lovely Himalayan views. That is like a constant everywhere in Landour.
Yeah, I think there perhaps is no place, given that Landour is such a small place also, there's no place in Landour from where you don't have the views, right? Be it the
Right.
view of the Himalayas, or just being engulfed by these beautiful looking trees, right from the deodars, like you mentioned, to the pines and everything. It's just that whole vibe
Yeah.
about the place, that every direction you look in, be it the hills or just being the woods, it's just such a breathtaking and a magnificent view.
Right. And then I did talk about the Dolma's Cafe for the Tibetan food.
Yeah.
And there's an Ivy Cafe. Oh yes, the Ruskin Bond's house is known as Ivy Cottage.
Right. Yeah, that's the one we touched upon earlier too. Yeah, looks like
Yes.
a lot of things to stop and just like you said, calm down, relax, and just enjoy a good meal or two, right?
Right.
It's that kind of a place. And yeah, just to again call out, while we're saying that this is like Char Dukan, like you mentioned, right, is the main hub of Landour. It's nothing like, say, the Mall Road in Mussoorie. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, then perhaps Landour is not the place where you want to go shop and see a lot of people and all of that. It's very quiet, very, especially if you go there in the non-touristy season, I guess. It's you'll barely find any people around you also. It's that sort of a place.
Right, exactly. So if you have to do some sort of a shopping, there's a place called Sisters Bazaar.
Okay.
So Sisters Bazaar is the place where nurses used to stay, because all of these soldiers who went there, they were war-torn soldiers who went there to relax. So there was nurses who used to stay there to, sort of give them some sort of a treatment. Or so that place is now known as Sisters Bazaar, where you can do some sort of shopping.
Okay.
Obviously not the Mall Road of Mussoorie.
Yeah.
A little walk from there takes you to a place called Lal Tibba.
Okay.
When I was a child, it was just nothing. It was just one spot where you can go and get a nice photograph. Now Lal Tibba has a good cafe also, where you can go eat something and do something, and obviously you can look at the view. Interesting part over here is that from Lal Tibba you can go to one of the private reserves over there, which is Johar Bhat National Reserve, and from there you can go for a trekking of Nag Tibba, which is quite famous among people now.
Right.
So it's a one-day trek. It's not too stressful, but
is this the Jabbar Khet or Wildlife Reserve?
Jabbar Khet.
Okay.
Yes, Jabbar Khet.
Yeah, and apparently this is one of the very few, or perhaps one of the first privately owned wildlife sanctuaries also within Uttarakhand and India, is what I read.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, the one big change was this entire thing, because when I was a kid, those hills, those were very scraggy looking brown hills. And now if you go, they are all green. They are like, it's a very well preserved and well maintained sort of a private reserve there. A lot of wildlife has come, a lot of birds have come in because of it. And now they organize a lot of nature walks around this area.
Right.
So I think one day every week, they organize this nature walk, and that's a way to leads to the Nag Tibba trek as well.
Okay.
Now, if you turn right, there's a small path which is more like a dark area. You turn right from Lal Tibba, and that path, I say, is den of all the stories that Landour can offer you.
Oh, really?
So there are ghost stories. There are signages also about ghosts. There's a story of this smuggler, which inspired Ruskin Bond to write one of his famous stories.
Okay.
Then you have a lot of places where these writers, they lived. So one of the main literary guest of Landour was Emily Aden.
Okay.
So Emily Aden was a sister of Lord George Auden, and she wrote a lot about how British are practicing racism in India. And so when I was talking about Emily's Kitchen, the Emily's Kitchen is actually named after Emily Aden, the writer.
Okay, I see.
So coming back to the story. So this story is about one British adventurer who was known as Pahadi Wilson.
Okay.
And yes, Pahadi Wilson, because he stayed in Pahadi. And so he made a fortune over there by illegally cutting down trees in that area, and then logging off those logs on the Ganges. And then there used to be some illegal depot somewhere down the river which could collect those logs and all that. And he made a fortune out of it. And all of these logs were sold to the British to build those the railway coaches, which were wooden at that time.
Right.
So all of that wood was coming on from there. And this entire story of Pahadi Wilson, this inspired Ruskin Bond to write The Man Who Would Be King. And that was his story.
Yeah, this sounds like quite the adventure seeker, right? Pahadi Wilson. And quite the entrepreneur too.
I just love the name Pahadi Wilson. His real name was Frederick Wilson. But over time, as the story grew and as people came to know about how he's making money and all that, he came to be known as Pahadi Wilson. And there are many ghost stories also. And in fact, some of the ghost stories that Ruskin Bond has written are actually inspired from Landour. So there's an old cemetery over there. Now there's a story that, this cemetery is like a den of, spirits and all that. And there's exactly a signage on the board also just before the cemetery that be cautious, you're walking on a dangerous path, something like this. So it exactly tells you that, there is a ghost, something. The cemetery is very old. It's still open, but there's almost nothing over there. And a lot of stories have come out from there.
Interesting. And perhaps I'm assuming this is probably been in use since the British times, right? Most of the British soldiers, I guess, would have been buried there, is what I'm thinking, yeah.
Yes. So there were 2 cemeteries in Landour at that time. Now both are almost out of use. But this one is infamous for its ghost and all that. The reason why they have 2 cemeteries was because this place became so much haunted that these British officers, they actually requested that a new cemetery should be made where we can go and bury our relatives, because we don't want them to return as ghosts. So the second cemetery came because this was supposedly haunted.
Because they couldn't rest in peace, I guess.
Yeah, they couldn't rest in peace.
Yeah, sorry about the crude joke there, but yeah, interesting story about the cemetery also.
Yeah. And a little distance from there is home of Sir John Everest. So Sir George Everest was a surveyor general. He was a mountaineer, and he's the man who did the entire trigonometrical survey of India.
Mm-hmm.
He covered almost all the peaks in India, from South India to the Himalayas. He measured some of the highest peaks in the world, all the Himalayan peaks. And then when he got old and all that, he built a house for himself in a very secluded corner in Landour.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go there. It's a little distance from a place called Hathi Paon, which is like the exteriors of both of Mussoorie town. And in that secluded corner, you can go and see his lodge. It's in a very dilapidated condition, but then it's the highest point in Mussoorie. And again, you should go there for your diet of history and then the lovely views over there.
Brilliant. This is quite a gem of this one. And if I'm not wrong, this is the same person after whom Mount Everest was named also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, quite something. And not far away from Landour is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's not far away from Landour. It's very close by.
Very, very interesting, and quite the contrast to our Pahadi Wilson that we just spoke about. But yeah, it's just sad that the home is in a dilapidated state. I hope we're able to kind of at least rebuild it, maybe, at least to
restore it.
Yeah, to some extent at least, so that it's in a state where people can visit and have a look at it.
Yeah, and there are other stories as well, like some cousin of Maharaja of Patiala, she fell in love with a British officer in Landour, and the entire secret love story was actually run in Landour at that time. So Landour has its own share of stories and stuff, and you can go from one spectrum to the other, from the ghost stories to love stories to stories of gallantry, adventure. Everything is there.
Yeah, that's quite the gamut of stories, and no wonder that Ruskin Bond grew up on these and kind of reproduced so many of these also, right?
Obviously. So when I was listening to all these stories, I was thinking the same thing, that no wonder Ruskin Bond has like such a truckload of stories with him, because he's living in that place which has seen all of these things around. I mean, every family will have something.
Exactly. I mean, I know we've been kind of under setting expectations right from the beginning, saying that there's not a lot of things to do, but we've actually counted quite a few things that people can go and see also, right? It's beyond just the vibe of it also at this point.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what I said. Landour is for those kind of travelers who want to go slow, breathe in the moments, look for stories, hear those conversations.
Yeah.
That is it. A lot of retired people settle in Landour. A lot of these army guys settle in Landour. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who have made their careers in writing and arts and films are settled over there. So you can imagine the sort of conversations that happen in Landour. And Char Dukan, as I said, is the place for listen to all these stories and gossips. it's a den of stories even today.
Yeah. Brilliant. And for people who have sampled enough of this, there's always Mussoorie. If you want to do more things, you can always go down to Mussoorie. If you want to see more people, you want to go down to Mussoorie.
Yes.
You can always do that. But yeah, Landour has its own charm, its own. For me, it almost feels like this has been somebody has like just frozen the moment in back in the day when the British were here, right? Everything from the kind of architecture to the kind of even in terms of commercialization, right? It hasn't been very commercialized. It literally feels like you're going back to the 1800s or early 1900s or whatever that is. So that's the great thing, and that's the USP for Landour for me. Now, having discussed all of this, is there more things to do here? Like, what else did you do while you were here at Landour?
So mostly, as I said, it's about long walks, and one of the interesting things which I found is those so there are signage boards over here on after every distance.
Mm-hmm.
And there are dustbins at almost around every 200 meters. There are dustbins, so the place is super duper clean.
Okay, that's
and
good.
There are these very witty signage boards, very witty, and in a way they are like very thought-provoking signage board as well. Mm-hmm. So there's one signage board which I especially liked is, if we liked noise, we wouldn't live here. If you like noise, you shouldn't be here. That exactly sums up everything what Landour is. If you want people and noise and all that, no, this is not the place for you. But if you want to grow beyond it, reimagine your life, think about something, then this is the place. There are other things. There are signage boards of these old English poets. Now, you may find signage boards of Thomas Eliot. You may find signage boards from Wordsworth's poems and all that. So that's sort of a literary connection that you can find here.
And a couple of other things also I saw, Aakash, that people probably might be interested in. There's a couple other churches also, I believe, St. Peter's Church and the Kellogg Church. The Kellogg Church, yes, dating back to the American missionaries who were in the area also for a while during the 1800s. So that's something people can do. And we did mention about the Jabarkhet Wildlife Reserve, right? There's a lot of treks and little guided walks that people can indulge in. There's a Landour School of Learning also, I believe, where a lot of foreigners come and learn Hindi and Urdu and Indian languages like that, which is quite unique, I thought, right?
Actually, thanks for reminding me, because that reminds me of some very good incidents over there. Uh-huh. You may find a lot of foreigners there and talking in the so-called sing-song Hindi, and they are always practicing Hindi because they come to Landour for this for their Hindi lessons, for this school of learning. Uh-huh. And apart from it, there are other international schools also over there. The Woodstock School is there. Yep. And because you have these international schools and you have this school of learning also, there are a lot of events which are organized in Landour in these cafes, which are for the locals there. And there could be live music, there could be rock bands, there could be, because, when I was there, we had a German band playing some songs there. This was like out of complete imagination that you are in Landour and you have a band of Germany playing some music for you. And then later I realized that this German band is actually they are the people who have come to this school of learning to learn Hindi. Mm-hmm. And to know more about the literature, Indian literature and Indian arts. And because they were a bunch of people who were into music and all that, they grouped together, formed a band, and now they were playing in the local cafe over there. So it was a very interesting serendipity for me. It was a good discovery because I wasn't imagining that to happen there.
Yeah. It's such a nice story, right? And a great connection also, drawing it back to the Landour School of Learning. That's what it's called. Thank you for drawing out such a dreamy and unreal picture at times, right? Mm-hmm. I would definitely urge people to head out and look at Aakash's blog. Just have a look at some of the pictures and the places that we've been talking about too. It's a brilliant blog. Do you want to touch upon a little bit about the blog and also how people can follow your work, Aakash?
My blog, as you have already mentioned, is handofcolors.me. Apart from that, you can check out my stories on Instagram. There's a Facebook page by Hand of Colors. You can check it out there as well. There's a Twitter and a Tumblr option also where you can. So mostly I actually am, the second kind of traveler who wants to go to places and breathe in the moment. So you'll find that in my blog as well. There are places where, it's more experiential. You just go, you live in those moments, you try to see what things are there and how differently things are. And Landour is like a childhood connection. I've seen it growing with me as I have grown.
A final couple of pointers to add also before we start winding this up, right? Tom Alter, right? If people remember the famous Gora who's usually there in most Bollywood movies, or he used to be in the Bollywood movies of the past, right? Tom Alter actually grew up here or was even born here, if I'm not wrong. So that's another Bollywood connection for you. Victor Banerjee, right? Joggers Park and everything. Yeah, he has a home like Aakash mentioned, and even people like Pranoy Roy of NDTV and
Pranoy Roy has
Vishal Bharadwaj.
Pranoy Roy has, Vishal Bharadwaj has, Arshad Varsi has, and last time I heard that even Shah Rukh Khan is ready to have holiday.
Okay, maybe we shouldn't get to that level that Landour also gets overcrowded and people start flocking in here, but I hope it retains its old charm.
I think these people also realize this thing that if you have to escape everything, you have to come to Landour.
And apparently, while I was doing a little bit of research of this, was Jim Corbett, right? The famous hunter, the hunter of man-eating killer, man-eating leopards and tigers, right? He actually grew up, his parents were here for a while, so he grew up for a few years in Landour as well. So a lot of beautiful connections also, not just the place, but some great personalities also have come out of Landour. So I think together Aakash and I have drawn out a few reasons for you to visit Landour, and just be mindful of the fact that you leave the place as it is. Don't pollute it, because as Aakash mentioned, the locals are already going a long way in trying to maintain the cleanliness of the place. You can do your bit too by making sure you're not polluting or even littering the place, right? So just make sure of that, and try to walk as much as you can, so that way you'll avoid building traffic and traffic jams in these hills and ruining their environment. So try walking as much as you can, try enjoying the views and the vistas as much as you can, and just trying to be. You don't have to do anything else while you're in Landour. Thank you so much, Aakash, for drawing this out so beautifully for us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
That was yet another great episode of the Musafir Stories. If you guys like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Audioboom, Savan, Pocket Casts, Castbox, Stitcher, or any other podcasting app available on iOS or Android. Please do leave us a review on iTunes. It goes a long way in the show's discoverability. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We go by the handle The Musafir Stories. Or, if it suits you, you could email us at themusafirstories@gmail.com or visit our website at www.themusafirstories.com for more information. All of these links will be made available in the show notes section of each episode. So here's to more traveling, sharing, and inspiring. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, happy travels and goodbye.